We call it power. It's the shellfish from the sea. Brings our carvings to life. When the sun and moon reflect off the eyes of the carved figures, brings them alive. A carved figurehead at the bottom of the feet, or a small carved figure between the legs, simply says that ancestor had children. There was a next generation. Great deeds, events, battles, legends, myths, history of our people was told a lot in our carvings on the buildings within the fortified villages. And that's why the buildings, they're all carved. The complex we're in now, on the outside, when you look around it in days of old, this is how our people used to live, in fortified villages. Around the outskirts of these villages were the palisades. Now the palisades were erected and built for protection from other tribes. This large building you're inside is a sacred house. It's not a church or a temple, a sacred house. We call it a whare tupuna. Whare is house, tupuna, ancestor. So it's an ancestral house, for the building is named. The name of this building, Te Rotouroa. Throughout New Zealand, you are going to see many of these buildings. They are all named after great chiefs from the past, from that area, of which the building it is situated. Many ceremonies take place inside our sacred houses throughout the country. We use these buildings for tribal meetings, entertainment, weddings. We also use them for funerals. We do not eat, drink, or smoke inside the building. The building is named after a chief. So when you walk inside the building, you're entering into the bosom. You're walking inside the chief, for it represents the chief's body. Have a look above the stage. It's the same as the outside above. The carved figure on the top, like the carved figure outside on the top, is the koruru. This represents the head of the chief. Being the head, he sees everyone who comes inside the village. He sees everyone who comes inside the house. Those two beams outside coming down, like the two beams inside coming down, ngā maihi, those are the outstretched arms of the chief, welcoming everybody inside. The two beams on the side, like the two beams outside on the side, straight up and down, is the tinana, represents the chief's body. The centre pole outside, like the centre pole beside me, the potoko manawa, the beating heart of the chief. That large beam on the roof from the front to the back represents his spine. And these beams coming down the side on the roof, his rib cage. So when you walk inside our sacred houses throughout New Zealand, you're walking inside the chief. They're all named after chiefs. You will see many of these buildings around, and they're built, the structure is exactly the same. We do have one rule. When we come inside these buildings for tribal meetings, entertainment, weddings, funerals, ourselves, and we ask our visitors to remove their shoes. It's a sacred house. Remove your shoes, come inside in peace. Well, we're not going to stay in here long, so it was quite okay to leave your shoes on. Now, the building outside on the right is a pātaka, food storehouse, used to store food, built on stilts above the ground, away from the dampness, the wet, and the children. And on the opposite side, smaller version to this, was the classroom. The children were taken inside, taught the ways of the land, told stories, legends, myths, so they could teach their children, so on and so on. So it was used for education. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how our people, how we used to live. Now, before we exit the building, ladies and gentlemen, traditional art forms of our Māori people, traditional art form of carving, weaving, tattooing. As you can see on my arms, I've got traditional tattoos. I've got it all down my chest and down my back. Now, they say that tattooing was introduced to the world through our Māori people. When the European sailors first arrived here, even the first European to set foot on land here in New Zealand, the Englishman, Captain James Cook, he documented in his diaries about this art form the world had not seen. Over a period of time, they started to take some of our Māori people back over to England to show off this art form. Here's a dark race, way down the bottom of the South Pacific. The Māori people, they've got an art form that does not wash off. Now, if you have a look in history, the dark races, the indigenous peoples of the world, used muds, clays, and paints for whatever purposes, ceremonial, and they washed off. Our art form did not wash off. The distorted figures, when they look more human, the more human-shaped figures, you see how the faces are carved? It symbolized, it represented the tattooing of our faces. We got no other parts of the body tattooed, just the faces. As time got by, our men also started to get the thighs and the buttocks tattooed. Traditionally, it was just the faces. With our men, as you can see, it was a full facial tattoo. Spiral designs on the forehead, the cheeks, the chin, the nostrils, and the lips were tattooed. Now with our woman also got tattooed. It was just the chin and the lips. What the tattooing of our faces signified was in the village way of life. When you became a man, usually between the ages of 15 to 20, when you shied away from the youth, you got yourself organized, you wanted to be with the men all the time, you wanted to go out and battle with them. They'd tattoo your face. And then everyone around knew that you were a man. And from that day onwards, you left your youth behind. So when your face was tattooed, you had become a man. Now with our woman, it was the later stages in life, usually the 30 age group plus, just the chin and the lips, and it brought the beauty back out in our woman. So it was sort of on even path. Say you had become a man, later on in life, it brought the beauty back out in our woman. The most common and popular of the dyes that we used was a small flightless black beetle. We gathered it together, placed it in a bowl, and we crushed it. We placed the bowl amongst hot embers. When it was heated, it went into a liquid, a dye. Have a look what they use today. Black Indian ink. You mix it with the blood, it turns green. The dye from the black beetle mixed with the blood turned green. We only had birds, so we used the bones of the birds. Tied it onto a small stick, a small mallet was taken, dipped into the ink, and it was actually cut into the face. It wasn't tapped. With all the greenery in our country, we had plants and vegetation that we used as medicines and oils. Now we had oils that we placed all over the face prior to tā moko. That's what we call tattooing. It numbed the face, during it to stop the bleeding, and after to stop it festering up. For a full facial tattoo done on a man, they say it took about 4 to 5 days. It just depended on the amount of pain that you could endure. So it only took 1 day. And they do say it. Tattooing was introduced to the world through our Māori people. It is our traditional art form. In today's society, a lot of our Māori people, we get to put on other parts of the body. But you will see a lot of Māori people around, traveling throughout the country. In today's society, with the facial tattoos. More and more so today, our women. A lot of our women are getting the chin and the lips tattooed. Done with the modern day tattooing machines and the black Indian ink. So with this art form of tattooing of our people, it is coming back into the light. A little story I want to share with you about this art form, ladies and gentlemen. One of our top TV presenters, she does the Good Morning show. About 5 years ago, she went overseas, and she actually said this on national TV. She went overseas, she was half Māori, half English. She went overseas for a holiday. She was in London. She was sitting outside a cafeteria, a bit of a bar. She was having a cup of tea, reading the paper, and she looked inside the bar, and she saw this gentleman standing at the bar. He was having a beer, and he had his chin and lips tattooed. So she made her way over to him, and she says to him, "Excuse me, I noticed you've got some facial tattoos." He says, "Yes." She says, "I'm from New Zealand. I'm a Māori from New Zealand." And this gentleman stepped back and he says, "Look, all my life I've been fascinated with this art form of tattooing. And I've traced the origins of tattooing back to the Māori people. I've read all about their culture, the people, and I'm amazed with them and this art form. I've loved this art form all my life. So with respect to these people and the art form, I decided to get my chin and lips tattooed." Well, this TV presenter says, "Well, unfortunately, in our culture, only the women get their chin and lips tattooed. The men get a full facial tattoo." So after a bit of a discussion, you could just imagine what he looked like in a couple of weeks from then. Something like this chap. Okay, before we exit the building, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of history of the country. Right throughout New Zealand, if you see books and you're into legends and myths, right throughout New Zealand, there are many legends that surround the great ancestor by the name of Maui Tiki Tiki Ātara. Now, one of the most famous of these legends of Maui is how he fished up the North Island